Start housekeeping, please.
Thank you for participating in today's meeting. If attending in person, please do not connect to Zoom or teleconference while in the room, and please silence all devices. If translation is provided, click on the globe at the bottom of your screen to select either English or Spanish. Public comment will be taken after each item. If you're in the auditorium and wish to comment, please use the iPads located in the lobby or complete a blue speaker card as available. If you need assistance, please find a South Coast AQMD employee. Speakers may be limited to a total of 3 minutes or less for all agenda items. Times may be shortened to ensure all speakers can be heard. A countdown timer will be displayed on the screen for each public comment. More time will be allotted for Spanish translation that is not simultaneous. For questions or issues on making a public comment, please call the public advisor at 909-396-2432. That's 909-396-2432. Please adhere to the speaker time limit and treat others with courtesy, civility, and respect. Failure to do so can result in your mic being muted or you being removed from the meeting. Be aware that this meeting is being recorded. By participating, you authorize recording of audio and visual content presented during the live event and consent to subsequent use of the recording in the public domain by South Coast AQMD.
Call to order the Stationary Source Committee for November and ask for roll call.
Good morning. Councilmember Cacciari,
Here.
Senator Delgado, absent. Supervisor Hagman.
Here.
Board Member Padilla Campos is absent. Chair McKellen
Here.
and Supervisor Mitchell, absent. We have a quorum.
Very good. We'll go on to action item number 1, which is execute a contract amendment for street sweeping. Ian,
Good morning.
good morning.
Happy wet Friday here. We're here to present a proposed amendment to an existing contract that we have with the Coachella Valley Association of Governments. We have a multi-year contract that we're in the last year of for street sweeping. As we know, particulate matter and dust is a real issue out in the Coachella Valley. And so we have this existing contract. What we've heard from CBAG is that they're hoping to find some additional funds for this. And we did just hold a dust summit out in Coachella Valley on November 6th. And many things coming from that. But one of the key things that we heard was to look to do near-term, mid-term, and long-term measures. And one of the things that we saw we could potentially do was to add some funding to this existing contract as sort of a short-term bridge to identify some longer-term solutions. So what this would do is provide an additional $220,000, which is sufficient for 1 year of funding, an additional year of funding for street sweeping services out. And this would be in the Coachella Valley from Coachella out to Palm Springs and kind of everything in between. And to provide that additional support as a sort of a temporary bridging measure. This funding would come from the Special Revenue Fund for 1309.1. I will note there's a little typo in the board letter. It says that we previously provided 1.37 million in funding. We provided 1.15 million in funding. This would bring it up to 1.37 if this is approved. And so we are recommending, or we're asking for a recommendation for this for approval.
Thank you very much. I'd like to note that Chair Delgado has joined us. Any comments or questions?
Curious, the measurabilities, how effective the program's been.
What we've, I think there's two pieces to this. One, there was a study that was conducted early on in the first phase of this contract to look at where should street sweeping be conducted. And so the program was tailored to match what that study found of like which streets do you focus on and that sort of thing. But I think the other aspect to this is really hearing from those on the ground there. And what we've heard from Coachella Valley is that they know the areas that are most important, and they really find this as a very important program for them. And so that they have requested that they think that this is something that is really
I understand they want to keep that. I'm just trying to figure that with the weather patterns and the winds that we get in the back, in my IE, how does it's like pushing up a a sand hill, or, does it actually be affected? That's why I was more curious. Maybe after a year, we could get maybe some data on that.
Sure. And I think we're looking at a variety of different strategies. This is not going to solve all of the problems out there.
I'll
Other
move
comments?
Mr.
Other comments? Do we have a motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Cacciari,
Yes.
Senator Delgado,
Yes.
Supervisor Hagman.
Aye.
Board Member Padilla Campos is absent. Chair McKellen,
Yes.
Supervisor Mitchell, absent. Motion passes 4 ayes.
Thank you very much. On to our informational items. First one is update on the proposed amended Rule 463, presented by Michael Morris.
Good morning, Chair McCallum and committee members. I'll be providing a brief presentation on our organic liquid storage rule. Next slide, please. So our Rule 463 applies to storage tanks that are above ground at chemical plants, marine terminals, oil and gas facilities, and other locations. They apply to the larger tanks that you see here in the picture, but they also apply to smaller gasoline tanks that are between 251 gallons and 19,815 gallons. Last year, we amended the rule to include some very stringent regulations for those larger tanks, doming, added seals, optical gas imaging, and those amendments aren't being affected by this particular rulemaking. Next slide, please. But we were so focused on those larger tanks that we overlooked those smaller gasoline tanks. And so we're here today to take a look at those smaller gasoline tanks. There are about 900 of those tanks. All combined, they'd add up to just a few of those larger tanks. So they're rather small sources. They're located at fire departments and police departments, parks that might be using them to fuel, say, lawn and garden equipment that hasn't yet transitioned to electric. But they're modestly used. They do mostly just act as dispensing equipment. Next slide, please. So what we need to do with this rulemaking is to clarify what the inspection requirements are for looking for leaks and things like that, and the vapor control requirements for these smaller tanks. We had looked at optical gas imaging for these tanks, but it really doesn't make sense. These tanks are fixed roof tanks. They're very small. They already have a requirement that they annually go through a vapor tightness check. We did run the numbers for the cost effectiveness. As you can see, greater than $8 million per ton of VOC reduced. So it doesn't make sense to have them do optical gas imaging. They will still continue to perform that vapor tightness check to make sure that they're operating properly. The other thing that we wanted to look at was vapor control. These gasoline tanks, they're used for dispensing. They utilize a phase 1 vapor recovery to control the vapors for that equipment. And so in that sense, they're already controlling it. There isn't really anything additional that we need to do. The larger tanks, they do sometimes vent to control devices or have special requirements. But for these small fixed roof tanks, we feel that phase 1 vapor recovery is sufficient. And luckily, all the tanks already have that. Next slide, please. So just to summarize real briefly what this rule is doing, it's clarifying that these smaller gasoline tanks don't have to do optical gas imaging. They can just stay with their vapor tightness check. We are adding a compliance pathway so that they can utilize phase 1 vapor recovery to control the vapors. Again, they already all have that, so it's just a clarification in the rule. And there's some other minor clarifications just for the overall ease of use of the rule. Next slide, please. This is mostly administrative. There aren't any cost impacts nor any emission reductions or increases associated with this rule. So there's not going to be a socioeconomic assessment, and we will be providing a notice of exemption for this rule. Next slide, please. We're not aware of any key remaining issues, and we are planning on bringing this to the board for your vote in January. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Very good, Michael. Thank you so much. It certainly won't affect the South Pasadena Police Department since they all have electric vehicles, but it has no effect. We're just making administrative changes. That's good. Any comments or questions? I would like to recognize that Supervisor Mitchell has joined us. Supervisor, good to see you. Seeing none, this is information only. Thank you so much. Next, we have update on the proposed amended Rule 1118, control of emissions from refinery flares. Heather.
Good morning. Good morning, Committee Chair, members of the committee. Heather Farr here to present proposed amended Rule 1118. This is our rule that controls emissions from refinery flaring. Next slide, please. Just by way of background, the rule was adopted in 1998, and it was last amended in 2024, so just last year. This is really an administrative amendment as well to correct an omission that we had in the last rule amendment. Even though this is administrative, we did feel like we needed a public process, so we did have a public workshop this past fall. Next slide, please. Just for the specifics on the proposed amendment. So Rule 1118 requires refineries to report flare events if they're above a certain threshold through our online system, the Flare Event Notification System. We call it FENS. When FENS goes down, which happens periodically, there is an alternative that they can phone it in with our 1-800-CUT-SMOG. However, we inadvertently excluded these daily cumulative. So there's like 4 different flare events that must be reported. And one of those 4 is not allowed to be reported through 1-800-CUT-SMOG. So we did want to go in and fix that. So they have that option if the system is down. Next slide, please. So our rule amendment is to make the amendment to allow 1-800-CUT-SMOG for those daily cumulative reports. As well, we found one area where we have a placeholder. We use this placeholder language called date of rule adoption, where we intend to put in the actual date. We found one place where we did not replace that placeholder language. So we'll make that change as well since we're going in. Next slide, please. So we do not also have no key issues that have been identified. So our next steps would be a set hearing in December with our public hearing in January. With that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Heather. Colleagues, any questions? Seeing none, this is also a receive and file information only. Thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you.
Next, we have an update on the proposed amended Rule 1111, a reduction of NOx emissions from natural gas-fired fan-type central furnaces for mobile homes, I believe.
Chair McCallan,
Yes.
we need to also check for public comment.
Oh, anybody in the public want to talk about any of the items we've just gone through?
Thank you.
Nobody online, nobody in person. I forgot. Thanks for reminding me. Okay, we're on 1111. Heather.
Good morning again. So yes, I would like to do a brief summary of our proposed amendments to Rule 1111. This is the rule that controls NOx emissions from gas-fired furnaces, typically those residential-sized furnaces. Next slide, please. So by way of background, this rule was adopted in 1978, and at that time it established 40 nanogram per joule limits on mobile home furnaces. In the 2009 rule amendment, we did adopt lower NOx limits, 14 nanogram per joules. We call those ultra low NOx burners for all furnaces with future effective dates. We did allow mitigation options so that manufacturers could pay a fee to sell those higher NOx units as they worked to develop those ultra low NOx burners for the furnaces. And all of the categories of furnace subject to the rule have transitioned to the ultra low NOx burners other than the mobile home furnaces. And so those compliance options had sunset dates, and the compliance option for mobile homes did sunset this past September. Next slide, please. So we are proposing to amend the rule to extend that sunset date for 5 years to allow the manufacturers time to develop those ultra low NOx mobile home furnaces. They will be able to continue to comply by paying the fee in order to sell those higher units, and we've extended it through September 2030. Next slide, please. We did include a public process for this rule amendment, including reaching out to all the manufacturers of the mobile home furnaces, as well as our environmental communities that are interested in this rule. We did, in addition, we had a public workshop this past fall. Next slide, please. We do have a key issue. We do have a stakeholder that have requested that we remove that lower NOx limit as well as the mitigation fees. However, that limit has been on the book since 2009. Removing it would be considered backsliding. We do have approval and support for having this option by the manufacturers. And we've used this for the other furnaces that are subject to the rule, that over time they were able to develop those lower NOx emission units. So we do not agree that we should remove the mitigation fee option for the manufacturers. Next slide, please. When it comes to the impacts, the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, we will have delayed emission reductions, but it is below the significance threshold. So this does qualify for an exemption, and they will develop a notice of exemption. As far as the socioeconomic impacts, we are not significantly impacting air quality or changing emission limits. So a socioeconomic impact report was not prepared, or is not required. Next slide, please. So then for next steps, set hearing will be in December with our public hearing scheduled for January. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Any public comment on this item? None in-house. I don't see any online. Any comments or questions from the committee?
Mr. Chair, just a quick question.
Sure.
Heather, what's the status of the technology evolution for mobile home furnaces? I know you've given them another 5 years and you're working with the manufacturers, meeting with them. Are they confident they can meet that, or what's happening?
The biggest hurdle is they don't sell a lot in our jurisdiction, so just that, the cost of developing them. But they have said that they can learn from the technology that they used for the other furnaces. They can use the technology transfer to try to develop those ultra-low NOx burners for mobile home furnaces.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, this is also information only, so thank you very much, Heather. We'll move on to a background on emission offset requirements and priority reserve. Jason.
Good morning, committee chair, committee members. We presenting the background on the emission offset requirements and our priority reserve. Next slide, please. So there have been recent committee comments in committee and board meetings made by representatives from the waste management industry requesting to be defined as essential public services for permitting purposes. Specifically, we are discussing composting operations as well as landfill renewable natural gas operations. These projects are being undertaken under SB 1383, which is the state's organic diversion program under Cal Recycle, with the goal of reducing methane emissions from landfills. This, of course, means new sources of air pollution at different locations, which require permitting. So today we're going to break down some of what this request means and walk through the rule and permitting complexities and potential consequences that may be triggered, and discuss next steps. Next slide, please. So starting with NSR, New Source Review, this is the cornerstone of air permitting, and it's required by both the state and federal Clean Air Acts. The design of this program, the NSR program, is such that as there is business and economic growth in the area, the emissions from the new and modified equipment do not interfere with our progress towards attainment, because the system is designed so there is no net emission increases over time. So among the many requirements, the two important components of NSR are backed and emission offsets. The backed program ensures that as new or modified equipment, or that new or modified equipment is subject to the lowest emissions standards for any particular category of equipment. Emission offsets, which we're going to be discussing today, means that any increases of emissions be offset from previous emission reductions that have been tracked and documented. And then with these two NSR components, along with the other requirements, there is assurance that there's not going to be any net emission increases in the program over time. Next slide, please. So emission offsets are determined during the permit evaluation process, and facilities may satisfy the emission offset requirement in a few different ways. The first way is the open market to purchase emission reduction credits, or ERCs. And ERCs are certified emission reductions that have been verified by staff to meet rigorous criteria to ensure the emission reductions are real and above and beyond our current rule requirements. Once an ERC is generated, that facility can use it for their own future projects or can sell it to a broker or other facilities to use for their projects. This is a market-based system and prices do fluctuate, but programmatic emission reductions are realized because a facility has to buy 20% more ERCs than what they're actually permitted for. The second way is through emission offset exemptions. And South Coast NSR system is different than the federal system in that we allow these exemptions. However, it's not the typical exemption you would think of for a rule requirement, where a facility simply does not need to fulfill a certain rule obligation. The district actually takes on the burden of covering those emission offsets. And this is all done with our internal accounting for the program to make sure we maintain that equivalency. We're not any less stringent than the federal system. So there are many different exemptions, but one of the most common ones is for low emitting facilities. And this is typically the small to mid-size businesses. And as long as we have that positive internal account, that means emission reductions have occurred in the program and we can continue to provide those exemptions. And this saves the smaller businesses from having to invest in those ERCs. Lastly, there is the priority reserve, and this is just a source of credits managed by the district, but this is funded by quarterly allocations from that internal account I just mentioned. And it was established to provide a reliable source of emission credits for specified sources, including essential public services. And if there are credits available, there's no additional charge to access that priority reserve, with some caveats in the rule. Next slide, please. So Rule 1302 contains the definition for essential public services. Any additions to this list on the right would require a rule amendment. Composting is currently not listed, and that primarily results in VOC emissions. For landfill RNG, there are a couple things to note. In the upper right of that list, there is landfill gas processing. And when the essential public service exemption was added decades ago, only combustion of the landfill gas as a fuel was contemplated. And that's how our rules were crafted to limit emissions. Now staff is evaluating this new technology, landfill gas RNG projects, and that is now creating a commodity and not just burning the gas, and that was not ever contemplated in our aged rules and the priority reserve, and now there's rule gaps. I think we can all agree these are beneficial projects. It's just now how do we address the offset requirements within our rule and permitting framework. So where this all comes together is that if the definition is expanded, and considering the rule gap, staff has concern with the magnitude of emissions impacting the offset exemption allowances for all businesses. As I stated before, district tracks and takes on the burden of those exemptions through its accounting, and these would be debited from the internal account. But there are negative consequences when certain emission thresholds are crossed. So next slide, please. So staff is still assessing these potential impacts, and will revisit CalRecycle's original organic diversion estimates. And staff does have experience permitting composting operations, but most of them to this point have chosen to stay below the existing exemption levels, or increase their control efficiencies to reduce their ERC burden. For landfill RNG, this is newer. We only have about 5 open in the permitting system right now that we're currently evaluating. And so our Rule 1315 is what specifies all this internal accounting and tracking for that internal account. A very important component of Rule 1315 are CEQA provisions for the cumulative net emission increases over the life of the rule. And there are thresholds for each contaminant. And we present this to the board each year with projections. If the thresholds are exceeded or projected to be exceeded, then all permit applications which depend on these offset exemptions will be on hold and cannot be issued. If a facility chooses to buy ERCs where they've previously been exempt, they can get their permit. But this would include those smaller businesses I mentioned, all of those that had not needed to invest in ERCs. So all the contaminants have different thresholds. It's just so that SOx is the lowest threshold by a significant margin. And so a very preliminary assessment has been based on 10 of these worst case scenarios for landfill RNG systems and considering this rule gap. And we do project that it would exceed the Rule 1315 CEQA threshold for SOx. And the projection would likely exceed it well before then, not to mention exhausting the priority reserve for SOx. Next slide, please. So obviously, with this concern, staff does feel a full analysis is warranted due to the potential significant permitting impacts. But then also, industry needs to plan for these future projects. And this is much more than can be addressed in our case-by-case permitting actions. So staff is committing to working with CalRecycle in addition to the other air districts to better understand these sources. But lastly, and most importantly, to fully and transparently address this issue, planning staff will be initiating the working group process to fully analyze the requests and develop recommendations for the board. In the meantime, permitting staff will continue to work on the open permit applications for these equipment, and facilities can continue to strategize to lower their emissions. And that concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Jason. I believe we do have some public comment on this item in-house. I don't have the slips, but someone does, I assume.
Yes, we do, Chair. We have 4 speakers in the auditorium. First up, Tom Kotrulis.
Good morning, committee members. My name is Tom Kotrulis. I am the Director for OC Waste and Recycling. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. OC Waste and Recycling has invested over $15 million to comply with SB 1383, an unfunded mandate to divert organic waste from the landfill and reduce methane emissions. To meet the performance expectations, particularly the need for higher throughput and reduced water use, we must transition from open compost piles to piles with covered and aerated piles. So these covers capture over 90% of the smog-forming emissions and significantly reduce the greenhouse gases. However, because of the original piles were never treated as source requiring air permits, adding the covers that reduce emissions is treated as if we are creating a new emissions source. This triggers very costly offsets requiring for the remaining proportion of the emissions, even though the covers eliminate the vast majority. For OC Waste and Recycling alone, these offsets could range from 3 to 5 million, ultimately borne by the public. And this is not unique just to Orange County. Public agencies across the region will face the same barrier as they work to meet SB 1383 mandates and operational needs. We also have a second speaker to explain further, so thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
Next is Jeff Arbor.
Hello, good morning, committee members. My name is Jeff Arbor. I'm with OC Waste and Recycling, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. But first, we appreciate staff's presentation and understand the district's responsibility to carefully manage the priority reserve and assess broader implications of expanding the essential public service definition. We recognize and respect that caution. At the same time, the specific issue we're raising may be narrower and may even not require a working group. One potential narrow pathway already exists in Rule 1304, which provides offset exemptions for resource recovery projects as defined by state law. Composting equipment is an integral part of our resource recovery projects, and a simple clarification recognizing composting as a form of resource recovery would allow systems like covers to be treated as part of the recovery function rather than a new source of emissions. There are also other narrowly tailored options, and because SB 1383 compliance obligations fall overwhelmingly on public agencies, and because costs flow directly to ratepayers, OC Waste and Recycling would support limiting any such clarifications, including 1304 or even Rule 219 approaches to publicly owned facilities only. This keeps the solution safe, narrow, and tightly aligned with the public sector's responsibilities. So just, kind of big picture, the way I see our landfills, they're not just landfills, they're resource recovery facilities. We have we're separating recyclables and having those recycled. We have organic waste coming in that's being separated and processed and composting. Also landfill gas to renewable energy. So it really, the composting facility is part of our overall resource recovery. And our goal is simple, is to reduce emissions, support state requirements, and avoid unnecessary public costs while fully preserving the integrity of the district's permitting and offset framework. So thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you for your comments. Next.
Sharon Frank.
Good morning. Sir Chair and Stationary Source Committee members, my name is Sharon Frank, and I'm the Vice President of Environmental Health and Safety for Bowerman Power Landfill Gas LLC. Bowerman Power is a subsidiary of Montauk Renewables Incorporated. Bowerman Power has successfully partnered with Orange County Waste and Recycling at the FR Bowerman landfill in Irvine for over 20 years. Bowerman currently operates a 20-megawatt landfill gas to electric facility at the landfill, which has operated since 2016. The landfill now generates landfill gas in excess of the electric facility's capacity. The excess gas is currently being flared as required by law with no corresponding beneficial use. In partnership with OCWR, Bowerman is now in the process of developing a renewable natural gas facility to beneficially use the excess landfill gas. Rule 1118.1, that is designed to reduce NOx and VOC emissions from landfill gas, limits flares to 20% of their annual capacity. The installation of this RNG facility will provide a beneficial use for the excess gas and will significantly reduce air emissions compared to flaring, while ensuring that flares at the landfill will meet Rule 1118.1. In 2016, district staff determined that the landfill gas to electric facility qualified as an essential public service. It was assumed in the air permit application this would also apply to the RNG facility. However, that has not been the case. Instead, district staff has narrowly interpreted Rule 1302 on a permit by unit basis rather than on a per facility or per project basis, with a resulting emission reduction credit calculation of over $17 million. Understandably, the district's interpretation puts the beneficial project in serious jeopardy. We come to you at this point with the understanding the draft permit is in the engineering review at the senior staff level. In the meantime, CEQA has been completed and the notice of determination is expected to be approved by the Orange County Board of Supervisors this December. The district's presentation today indicated that staff is concerned that this project, as well as 10 other projects not actually planned or permitted at this time, could exceed the cumulative threshold for SOX offsets. Based on the district's presentation to this committee in August of 2025, there is more than enough offsets in the priority reserve to accommodate this beneficial use project. The emissions from this project equate to less than 1% of the offsets available in the reserve for each of the criteria pollutants. We wanted to bring this matter directly to your attention, given the important beneficial landfill gas reuse implications at stake. We would also appreciate possible direction from the governing board staff to reevaluate its current interpretation of Rule 1302. We believe doing so is consistent with the state of California, the city of Irvine, and the district's goal to reduce emissions from landfills, to promote RNG and
Thank you for your comments. Next.
David Rothbard.
Good morning. David Rothbart representing Clean Water SoCal. I thought it might be helpful to have a really big picture perspective of what people are talking about here and really appreciate staff looking into this. Big picture, what's going on in California is you have SB 1383 that tells cities and counties take food waste out of landfills. Landfills generate methane, greenhouse gas emissions. The idea is reduce that. What do you do with this material? The food waste could go different places. I represent a lot of wastewater treatment plants. You could accept it there and generate a beneficial use of that gas. You could also go to compost. Just another fact that's useful to keep in mind is compost emissions. There's studies that have been done saying compost emissions, the VOC emissions that could lead to ozone, are less reactive. So it has a lesser potential to generate ozone. So just big picture, this is what's going on. But we've had an issue as far as changing Reg 13 to encourage facilities to take the food waste. That's what we're talking about of we need the food waste to go somewhere. So we're asking you to open up Reg 13 to not deplete the bank, but to do it wisely to allow and encourage the facilities to accept the waste and do something good with it and reduce methane emissions from landfills. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else in house? Seeing none, we have two online. Adrian Martinez.
Good morning, Chair McCallum and members of the committee. This is Adrian Martinez on behalf of Earth Justice. Thanks for the presentation today to staff. I appreciated learning a little bit more. I'm directing my comments not to the composting part of it that, seems pretty straightforward, but I do want to raise some issues around the RNG projects. First of all, it's not clear what the scope of this potential definitional change will be. You could create a scope that would be massive and could, create all sorts of impacts to the region. And then second, I hope as staff is looking at these RNG impacts, they recognize that the state of California, through its low carbon fuel standard, already showers lavish incentives on RNG projects. So while I understand that the kind of upfront emissions offsets can be difficult, this is a commodity, as was previously said, that will be sold or used in some application and generating valuable and actually in our assessment pretty over valued assets. So I think as this is being reviewed, I hope that issue gets looked at, and I hope that there is a little bit more, at least some discussion of this issue. I think it was previously referred that this could be done without a workshop or without just kind of ad hoc. So I hope there is at least some engagement, particularly with the environmental community who's been concerned with emissions offsets in the region for years. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Adrian, for your comments. Next, we have Steve Jepson.
Good morning, Committee Chair McCallum, board members, and staff. My name is Steve Jepson, Executive Director for Clean Water SoCal. We're a nonprofit representing 80 public water and wastewater agencies. So I wanted to comment a little more about SB 1383, which is intended to divert organics from landfills, a good thing. The two primary organics being diverted are green waste and food waste. Those can either go to digesters or compost, as previously indicated. Of course, the wastewater treatment plants already have digesters constructed. In fact, the State Water Board did a study and determined that there's enough existing digester capacity in the state at wastewater treatment plants to take all the food waste. The problem with these food waste diversion projects is the finances are delicate, and diverting food waste and accepting food waste at a wastewater treatment plant is not part of the core mission. So these projects need to be revenue neutral for them to be embraced by the wastewater agencies and be consistent with Prop 218. So for this reason, it's very important to preserve the priority reserve and make sure that there are, with an eye towards flexibility, to enable these projects that can divert food waste, capture the biomethane generated, use it beneficially. And these are projects that the public and the Air Board should want and encourage. And they're great for the wastewater community too, to be more resilient. That's all my comments for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Staff, could you respond to first the composting and then secondly, the natural gas issue? I think they're separate issues that were brought up.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chair. I'll try and address each of these. First, I want to make sure that for composting, it's not the cover itself that requires a permit. It's when you aerate, it's the aerated static piles that we require permits for. So there's some intervention to aerate it to assist the composting process that results in emissions that requires permitting. The cover itself is the control mechanism. I'll add in our rules, the minimum required control efficiency is 80%. That is one of the items in the presentation where facilities can opt to increase their required permit efficiency to reduce that ERC burden. So they can accept 80% and purchase more ERCs, or if they want to go to 95%, then that would be less emissions because they would commit and test those processes over time to make sure they're meeting that. In regards to, there was comments on existing 1304, Rule 1304 offset exemptions. We did explore that with the facility. We have communicated with them that does not apply to this. In the past, that has applied to municipal solid waste incinerators. However, it's important to consider that those Rule 1304 offset exemptions are the same exemptions I mentioned that would still pull from the internal account and would be added towards that CEQA threshold. So in terms of priority reserve, are those Rule 1304 exemptions, it's going to be the same. I'll move over to RNG for the amount that's being flared. For the 20% flare capacity, how that rule works is if a facility is going to exceed those flare thresholds in the rule, then they have to then commit to installing a cleaner flare that meets BACT, or they have to do it through a beneficial project, utilize the RNG, and that's what they're doing. So here, in terms of what was evaluated when the engines that burned the landfill gas were evaluated, that did meet the essential public service definition. As I said, that was combusting, that was using the gas as was intended and was evaluated under that rule amendment. RNG was not evaluated at that time because you have to do that in the current permit evaluation, the current permit application. And that is where we're seeing that It's the sulfur emissions that now are no longer being combusted as a fuel, and that is how our rule limits the sulfur emissions as a fuel. Now they're just pulling the sulfur out, but then later incinerating, but not as a fuel. So we have to count all those sulfur emissions as part of this project, and that's where we're running into this problem. But this is not a no, it's we need to see how we're going to address this. These are beneficial projects, can utilize this gas rather than flaring. But this isn't something we address in case-by-case permitting actions. It needs to be done through rulemaking.
Yeah, it's hard for someone to understand why existing generating electricity is essential public service and something that is generating natural gas is not essential public service at the same facility at the same time.
Understood is we are hearing as staff goes through the permitting process, we adhere to the provisions in our rules and unfortunately can't go case by case with these situations. But again, the issue at hand that we really need to carefully analyze is if these are going to be have access to the internal account or priority reserve, are those CEQA thresholds? Is maybe there needs to be higher control efficiencies so they don't draw the account too fast, and then it affects all businesses because thresholds crossed and we no longer have offset exemptions that we can provide to all businesses.
So I know we're looking at this. What are we? We having meetings. We're involving the stakeholders, and we're going to get this done by.
So I will commit to that, well, on behalf of other people in attendance here, that it will be initiated in January right away. I think that all has to be evaluated and go through the public rulemaking process in terms of timelines. I don't know if we have any estimates at this point. Not at this time.
Committee members, Chair Delgado, go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, so I did have meetings with some of the stakeholders and their concerns about this. I can't tell you that I technically understand everything that's going on with this one. It sounds complicated, but it does feel like what we're doing isn't, like, we know there's a problem. Is there an urgency to get this done, or could we fix the CEQA? I'm sorry, I'm sure I'm not asking the question correctly, but I think you understand that, like, do we have to pass this now and make this incongruency, or could we fix it and then bring it back at the same time?
The challenge is all of this is in SIP approved rules, so it's enforceable by anyone. The bigger concern from my perspective is a potential permit moratorium across the entire basin. And so we understand that we have to revise the rule. The question will be how fast can we do that? And that's something that we're looking at. The other implications are, as we heard earlier, was what is the real impact to the reserve? And one of the things that we're trying to do is to look at those calculations and then also trying to understand what the precedent means in terms of opening up, which then again could lead to permit moratorium. And I don't want to play with a permit moratorium. That is extremely damaging across the entire sector of businesses.
It's not for all permits.
I understand it's not for all permits, but perhaps Susan can add to this. Susan?
I just want to clarify what Wayne had said, is that the permit moratorium would only apply to those that are accessing, that have the offset exemptions. They're using our offset, so the less than 4-ton sources, and the essential public services that use the priority reserve. It's not the ones that are using going into the open market.
Just a follow-up question then. Is there a way that we can have clarifying language that we will work with those impacted entities until the rule is fixed? I just don't want to penalize folks who have projects in process. I don't truly understand the impacts as clearly, so I just wanted to see if staff could do some of that follow-up.
We'll definitely be following up, and we'll reach out to all the parties and then back to you, Chair, as well as the committee.
Okay.
We understand there's a lot of concern.
All
and
right, thank
we
you.
understand the impacts. Thanks.
Question, is this on our rule forecast?
Yes, it will be.
It is.
It already is 1435, 30.
No, we're adding it for
Next
December
year.
for 2026, but it's on the rule forecast.
Thank you.
Yeah, couple items for 31.1, which is the other rule that addresses the sulfur emissions I was talking about, is on the forecast calendar because we foresaw this coming in the permitting process. And then again, we'll have our working group process.
Vice Chair Cacciata, you have comments?
Yes, thank you, and maybe some questions,
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair. So again, wanting to avoid the permit moratorium, whatever scope it is. And as David said, Rothbard, I mean, looking at the big picture, it was SB 1383, hammered our cities. I know the cities I represent in the San Gabriel Valley, 30+ cities, including mine, have had to modify our whole, standards of how we collect trash. Our city has gone to a 3-stream system, which a lot of cities have already done, but it's cost to ratepayers significant as we adjust, and then whether it's Athens or the other large companies that, work in our basin, they're charging the ratepayers in the cities more. So all of my cities have had to comply with 1383, and the composting. So looking at this, and you've talked about maybe, I think you said higher control efficiencies, Jason. So what's the state of the art right now? I know when they take away all of our green waste, organic waste, I know Athens goes out, they've got a couple of facilities now somewhere in the San Fernando area up there. Is it all done outside and there's large covers? I know when I was a couple of years ago in San Bernardino, we were doing some stuff with electric off-road equipment at some landfills. They were huge, but just, acres and acres of dirt and stuff they're moving around. Are there enclosures now? Can we, require something that these emissions, at least in the composting arena? What's happening? Because I know my ratepayers don't want to pay another 10, 15% for, modifying our waste contract every year.
Absolutely. So for composting, the covers are there. And so those are outside, but they do have a cover, a Gore-Tex cover. Fairly rudimentary, but they do cost a lot, but that control emissions. And again, we have seen in source tests where they are capable of higher efficiencies. It's just not currently required by BACT or in our rules. So that is something that facilities can look at, and then also we can look at during rulemaking. There are some very large operations that are indoors in an enclosure. I don't think in terms of control efficiencies that moves the needle any more than the other technologies. For landfill, RNG, and the sulfur emissions, I can't speak in too much detail to it, but I will say some operations are looking at new emission controls to address this issue. And it's a very early stages. Like I said, all of these are going through the evaluation process. When this was posed to them, they are looking at that and working through it.
Just one comment on 1383. I know over the years, the requirement, how much you're supposed to send to landfills versus organic and recycle, has been increasing. Is it still going to increase from like 75 to 100% pretty soon? I know it was at 50% and then 75. So it's going to be more of a problem, maybe more of an issue as the state requirements come into effect. I can't remember SB 1383 if it's where it's at in that percentage.
I don't know on future. As I said, we're going to be we have past discussions with Cal Recycle, and I believe the original target for the 75% was supposed to be 2025.
Yeah.
To see, and again, see if those estimates were accurate is one thing. We will have to engage and see if there were increased targets for all of that. And I don't know if, we'll have to engage with our stakeholders as far as this is growing. But all we will say, looking at Cal Recycle's 2018 assessment, they attempted to look at are there enough emission reduction credits available in each of the districts? It was a little off the mark looking back in hindsight in the report, because they did not take into account the CEQA provision in the rule. It looked at our internal account as ERCs, but did not address the CEQA provision.
I know in our city, got code enforcement guys going around and checking the barrels to make sure they're putting the waste in the right barrel.
You know, you're right, Larry. I did a tour of Athens facility in City of Industry off Valley there in the 605. And they've got teams that actually in a neighborhood or even on a street, they'll go through the trash to make sure you're doing it right. So be careful. Kurt's got something.
Kurt?
Thank you. Just some general comments. I was chair of San Bernardino Solid Waste when this came through and the preview of the bill coming through. And we were just trying to figure out practicality in the size of the county that we have. And almost like it's already happened, so we got to deal with this law. But if we could do a better job in showing the pragmatic side of it, can you imagine now instead of 3, we have 4 trucks going to every home throughout a county. Now, like you said, we're supposed to have inspectors go around. We're supposed to put, waste foods in a separate container that's sitting there at 120-degree temperature, brewing for a week, and it's not supposed to be a public health issue. This thing's asinine, okay, the whole part of it, and for some of the purpose. And then you see all the down effects of all the other things we have to deal with. And so the first thing was like, well, we're supposed to have this no unfunded mandate. How do you want us to do this? Well, find your customers to pay for the inspections. That's going to go real well. So, I just don't know, Wayne, it's got to happen like weekly, but to see a goal from the state legislature compete with the actual reality of what it takes to put into operations has got to be constantly a frustration for you and your team. But this is it too. We set these standards, doing composting, get this stuff out. We're trying to help everybody trying to figure out where to spread the compost. I don't know how much trucks that's taken to spread the compost around and how much emissions we're doing by spreading this compost around or regenerate these things. Is there a way we can modify some of these things? But we've also met with many of the stakeholders here to try to expedite this into next year. Hopefully completion would be the one ask. I think some of the proposed amendments are great, but it's frustrating that we have to deal with it to begin with. But thank you.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll go on to our, we have written reports. Is there any need to take a look at any of those written reports?
We have one comment card for item number 6.
For item 6, okay. Go ahead,
That'll be David Rothbart.
David.
First, I want to thank the chair for his support on permit streamlining and also staff for working on permit streamlining. And not to sound like a broken record, but I do think it's important to look at what permitting needs to do and all the requirements they have to comply with. Specifically, one thing I've talked about before is the need to reopen some rules to make it more efficient. A very specific example I have experience with is when you are a facility and you're promoting research, you're saying, okay, I have a potential project that could reduce emissions. You get a research permit. Unfortunately, it's more difficult to get a research permit to demonstrate cleaner technology than it is to get a regular permit. So already it's taking, 2 years to get a permit for a regular permit. So I've been on a program where we tried to take biogas from a wastewater treatment plant and convert it to hydrogen for clean vehicles. We said we need a permit really quickly. It wasn't possible because Rule 441 is so outdated. It really needs to be updated, and it would be a nice thing to do. There's a number of other rules, but as far as picking something that will help Jason's team out, and especially the waste sector, we'd really appreciate very much to open up that rule. And maybe there's some others we could come back with and just pick our poison of what's going to get you the most bang for your buck to get permits issued faster and maybe get some emission reductions at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you. Staff want to comment on that?
I'll take a look at what David just suggested. We do have the rulemaking calendar coming out for the December board packet that will talk about all of the rule priorities that we have in the coming year. So I'll check it and we'll get back with David.
Okay, thank you very much. We have one online, Steve Jepson.
Good morning. I'm sorry I lied earlier. I said that was going to be my last comment for today, but I do have another comment, and hopefully that'll be the only lie I tell today. So once again, thanks for the opportunity to comment. Steve Jepson, Executive Director for Clean Water SoCal. We appreciate the efforts by Jason Aspel and the permitting staff to work on streamlining our permits. Unfortunately, we're still experiencing long permit timelines, and most of these projects are for cleaner equipment. But it's not just the delay, it's the long timeline creates issues and wrinkles with the required public agency bidding, procurement, construction projects. It really makes some projects challenging and exposes the public agencies to delay liabilities with their vendor and contract services. In some cases, the long permit timelines can be attributed to unnecessarily complicated rules. We'd welcome the opportunity to work with staff on some rule cleanup to make the permit process a little simpler. Additionally, as you heard earlier with food waste diversion and SB 1383, the wastewater sector is approaching a sea change in biogas and energy management and equipment. We've got SB 1383, we've got air district policies to reduce or eliminate combustion. We have CARB requirement for zero emission, primarily electric vehicles. We're going to need more than ever new, reliable, clean technologies to meet these challenges. Research permits under Rule 441 are an important part of that process. And Rule 441 needs to be modified to encourage research clean energy projects and streamline them for essential public services. And we really look forward to working with staff on achieving those goals. Thank you so much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Steve, for your comments. Next, we have Curtis Coleman.
Yes, good morning, Kurt Coleman, Southern California Air Quality Alliance. I just want to take a moment to compliment Jason and his staff. I've had, in my last couple of Air Quality Alliance meetings, I've had my members talk about how the communication seems to have gotten much better between the facility permitting people and Jason's staff, the permit engineers that are actually working on their permit applications. And that's not something that really shows up in metrics or in numbers, but it's an attitude that we really appreciate. And I think Jason's done a good job of fostering that among his staff, and we really appreciate it. So we want to see the numbers keep getting better, but I just wanted to compliment the staff, the permitting staff, on their openness and willingness to discuss things and come up with prompt solutions to problems and work through issues. And it seems like a much more cooperative process than it was some time ago.
Thank you, Curtis, for your compliments. We have a great staff here at AQMD, and they work very hard, and we appreciate people recognizing that. Vice Chair Caccione.
Just one on item number 8, Larry.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's a notice of violations. Terrence, sorry, I was just looking at these this morning. There's one that just stands out. It's Phillips 66, LA Refinery, Wilmington, and it's multiple, like over a dozen violations, and the fine was almost $500,000. Enormous, $460,000. Is it just a minute? Tell us what that was for. I looked at, there's dispensing, there's so many violations, but was something happening at the facility, or it seems very significant?
Terrence is coming to the mic.
Thanks.
Morning.
Morning, Terrence.
Thank you for your question.
Sorry for the surprise.
It's okay. It's okay. I don't have the full list in front of me. But from the enforcement side, it is likely, it's okay, I heard. It is likely a result of the blue sky, the annual inspection. But you know, how it works is the enforcement team will conduct the annual inspection and, you know, respond to complaints, breakdowns, that kind of thing. And then we refer all of the violations that we issue to the legal department. And so, in terms of what that means, it's not necessarily like on, you know, January 1st, this thing happened. It could be, here are the violations over a period of time that went through the negotiation process. And with that, I'll defer to legal if they have anything they'd like to add.
But do you have the violations?
Yeah.
Thank you.
So looking at the wide variety of violations here, there's gas dispensing violations, there's refinery flare violations, there's leak detection violations, reclaim allocation violation, Title V permit violations, actually some federal regulations that I am anticipating are probably new source performance standards violations based on the number. So it does seem like it's not just all one incident. There's actually 7 different tickets written here. And so it could well have been what Terrence was explaining.
Is this a facility that's closing down or?
Yes, that's our understanding anyway.
And when do we know when it's closing down? I know they've got a plan for what they're going to redevelop it as.
Aren't they ceasing by the end of this year?
That was the latest report. Our understanding it's the end of this year, early next year, but it's been a bit of a transition, so it's not always, you know, I don't think it's cast in stone as of today. But it's coming soon.
Terrence, you think as they know they're closing down soon, are they just getting negligent or just lazy on complying?
You know, and I'm sorry, I can't.
Vice Chair?
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
but I could answer that question right there. Sorry, go ahead.
Hey, Bate.
Hi. So another thing to keep in mind, and I don't know for sure if that's the case with these, but all of the Title V facilities are required to do deviation reports if there are any possible violations at their facilities, in addition to the blue sky inspections that we do affirmatively. And so when we get those Title V deviation reports, we look at those to see if there are any violations. And that's something that all of the Title V facilities do. And they're required to do those by federal law. And so periodically, it's not uncommon to see larger fines against some of the Title V facilities if they do have a number of deviations reported.
So board member, and maybe I can add a little bit as well with regards to their operations. They have notified the state that they are ceasing operations. They have notified us, and they, as I understand, the facility is in the process of idling. They're still maintaining their permits. My understanding is, though, that with regards to the fuel, they have the storage capacity where they can bring in finished product. So they can still provide product to the fuel market. But they have notified the state that they are closing their operations. There's one other facility that's made notification, and that's the Valero facility up in Benicia. So there is a statewide refinery task force that's looking at the fuels, fuel availability, impact on consumers. We are actually part of that task force. We meet with CEC along with other agencies, and we're looking at those issues. We're seeing that a number of refineries are, in fact, noting some of our rules do have an impact on their operations. And so that's why we're staying in very close communications with all the refineries. And I think either later today or next week, we're meeting with Marathon on some of their issues in terms of where they are with 1109.1. But we are very closely monitoring and on top of the refinery operations.
Good, good. Thank you very much. And have we, any other comments? Seeing none, we'll go on to other matters. Any other business we need to talk about? Seeing none, then we'll go to general public comment on items not on the agenda, but on the purview of this committee. And I see we have one hand, Rita Loof.
Good morning. Rita Loof, Director of Environmental Affairs for RadTech International. And RadTech submitted written comments on Rule 1107, metal coatings, which is on the board's December agenda. We are agnostic on the phase out of PCBTF and TBAC because our materials do not contain those chemicals. We really appreciate the staff's inclusion of clarification language related to test methodology in the staff report. And our ask is simply for that language to be included in the resolution language for the rule for clarity's sake. Here's the scenario we are trying to avoid. Suppose I'm a facility that is doing metal coatings using TBAC or PCBTF. I decide to eliminate those products and convert to toxic-free materials like UV, EV, LED. Now I have to figure out if I need a permit, which test method I'm going to use, and essentially be in the same regulatory process as I was when I was using toxics. The additional permits will add to the district's backlog, and this will negatively impact the permit enhancement program that the district has going on. Our point is that facilities that are reformulating products and switching to materials that do not contain PCBTF or TBAC should be encouraged to do so and not be subjected to the same overly prescriptive requirements of the rule. Would we treat a diesel truck like we treat an electric vehicle for purposes of regulation? We would not. And that's the same scenario that we bring up for the metal coatings industry. So we would respectfully ask that UV, EV, LED technology be included in the exemption portion of the rule alongside the already existing exemptions. Thank you.
Thank you, Rita, for your comments. Next, we have Howard Reagan.
Good morning. My name is Howard Reagan. Good morning to members of the committee. I'm the managing partner of UV Specialties, LLC. I'm a past president and a current board member of RadTech, which is the industry organization for energy curing technology. I have comments on proposed amended Rule 1107 metal coatings as it relates to energy curable materials. Unlike conventional inks and coatings, UV, EB, and LED products do not evaporate. Instead, they are specifically formulated to react to UV light or beams or electrons. The nature of the process is such that virtually no volatile organic products, VOC, are generated. In addition, the process uses electricity and thus does not generate combustion contaminants, either nitrogen or sulfur oxides and greenhouse gases. We think Rule 1107 should offer incentives for companies who are going above and beyond to reduce emissions by converting to energy curable technology. Our request is simply to add clarity and specificity regarding test methods by inserting the language proposed by staff in the staff report in a more prominent location, such as the resolution portion of the rule. There's language under the multiple test methods section that allows the district to select any method of enforcement and issue violations. We believe that this type of confusing language puts our industry at risk for enforcement action by the district and is a barrier to the implementation of clean air technologies such as ours. In the past, this rule included a definition of energy curable materials. The district eliminated that definition during the last rule amendment So we no longer have that clarity. We would very much appreciate some assistance to those Good Samaritan businesses who are moving away from toxic materials in VOCs. An exemption would solve all of these problems and help the district achieve additional emissions reductions. I appreciate the time to present this.
Thank you, Howard, for your comments. Next, we have Todd Griffin, excuse me.
Good morning, Chair McCallum and members of the committee. My name is Todd Griffin, and I am the Vice President of Sales for GreenPack Inks and Coatings Incorporated, a leading manufacturer of environmentally friendly electron beam and ultraviolet coatings for the graphic arts industry and beyond. We specialize in exceeding our customers' special requirements and take pride in having the cleanest products in the industry. We serve customers throughout the U.S., including Southern California. We speak on behalf of our Southern California businesses who would be negatively impacted by Rule 1107 metal coatings. Proposed amended Rule 1107 harms our industry and stands in the way of achieving additional emission reductions for the district. We echo the request made by the RadTech Association for an exemption for UV-EB LED processes. At GreenPack, we believe in win-win partnerships, creating an environment in which all are enriched by our actions. We hope we can partner with the district to help you as you seek to phase out the toxic chemicals and clean the air. Our goal is to grow the organization by consistently providing environmentally sound products with cutting-edge support services. As it stands, the Rule 1107 staff proposal is a missed opportunity to gain voluntary emission reductions for the district. Instead, the burdensome administrative requirements, which have nothing to do with cleaning the air, act as barriers to implementation of clean technology. According to staff, proposed amended Rule 1107 will seek to phase out two toxic compounds, TCBTF and TBAC. UV-EB LED materials are not formulated with these chemicals, the TCBTF and the TBAC. Therefore, our company urges the district to provide regulatory flexibility to UV-EB LED processes. Our materials are typically well below 50 grams per liter in VOC content, which is minimal compared to the proposed limits. We respectfully request that the UV, EB, and LED materials are exempted from the rule requirements, resulting in additional emission reductions for the district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Todd, for your comments. Staff, would you like to respond?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity. First of all, I just want to be clear here. So UV-EB is a curing technique. They still use materials or coatings in that process, and it's the potential VOC that the rule is regulating from. They are correct that there are not toxics in there, and that's great news. But as far as any sort of technique or what have you, as you know, we give industry that flexibility on how they plan to operate their processes on doing so. Nothing in the rule, by the way, precludes the usage of UV, and I would encourage that, but it still needs to be, the VOCs of those materials still need to be regulated, and that's what this rule does. As with regards to the test method, as you know, you might have heard this before, EPA has not approved that test method, and that's why it's not included in the rule.
Thank you. We have reached the end of public comment and the end of this meeting. So we're going to adjourn until January. We're not having a meeting in December. Yes.
Chair, before we adjourn, if I may, since I came in late, if I could be added to the roll as an aye vote for the one vote we took on agenda item 1, I'd appreciate that.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said.
That's the first vote. She wants.
Oh, this is the first vote. You want to add your vote to it? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll make that happen. I got new hearing aids, so I'm adjusting. I'm adjusting to that. Sorry. So we're adjourned till January. No meeting in December. So Merry Christmas to everybody. Happy Hanukkah and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Enjoy the rain.
Let's see you before then, Larry. I know that.